Cannot.
I can.
You can. Okay, that's good to know. Um, okay, so do you want me to get started?
Yeah, the floor is yours. Vicky is doing a session on careers in three major cities in Canada. I know that a lot of people who had questions about the about careers and opportunities differences between the major cities in Canada, they most likely have disconnected because of the time zone.
Yeah.
Some of them in India were posing questions, but we'll make the recording available.
Yeah, wait.
And
Yeah. So one thing I have to keep in mind is I have a Mac, so if I put the play, I cannot see the question in the chat. So what I've done is I've kept my presentation around 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have the Q&A at the end.
Awesome. We'll
So
keep note of the questions as well,
yeah,
and we'll let you know.
okay, perfect.
All right, take it
So
away.
yeah, perfect. So, hi everyone. So, as Victor mentions, today's session is basically comparing Montreal, Toronto versus Vancouver about the Power Platform careers, but as well comparing those particular city. So, as Victor mentioned, my name is Vicky Rodgers. I am an independent Microsoft Dynamics 365 consultant, as well as a Microsoft Dynamics 365 trainer. I recently applied for my MCT about 2 weeks ago, and I did not get a reply. So that is super exciting. I hope I'm gonna get it as soon as possible. Um, Also, more about me. I am 16 times Power Platform certified, and there's more to come because I have to do the PL 200 fairly soon. Right now, I am based out of Vancouver, British Columbia. So if you want to be super specific, I am currently living into the neighborhood of Yaletown, which is in downtown Vancouver, but I am moving this week to the South Surrey area. And also, I lived in all of Canada's three biggest cities. So I am originally from the city of Montreal. I lived there all my life until about 2 years post graduation. I lived in Toronto for a year, and I'm living in Vancouver since 2019. So I moved in about 6 to 7 months before COVID. So, yep. And I am also fluently bilingual in Canada's both official languages, with which are English and French. So I have not one, but two Canadian fun facts, which are both holiday season related. Number one, did you know that approximately 30 Christmas movies are filmed in Metro Vancouver every single year? Um, the one picture that you are seeing is an area in Metro Vancouver which is called Fort Langley, which is about 40 kilometer outside of the downtown core of Vancouver. And this street that you see has been featured in about 100 Christmas movies so far and counting. My second Canadian fact, and that is because Black Friday is coming up. One of the most sold item on Black Friday, and I made a typo here, I'm so sorry, because I just recently included it. Let's just pretend this did not happen. One of the most sold items on Black Friday is a Canadian invention, which is the Instant Pot. So, if you have no idea what that is, the Instant Pot is actually a multi cooker. So, you can do slow cooker, pressure cooker, rice cooker, a bunch of different things with it. Just to give you guys a bit of an idea, so my spouse is from India, actually, and if a non-Indian person, can make dal tadka, rajma masala, chana masala, and all of those Indian dishes at home with this, anybody can. And the nice part is that, unlike the traditional stovetop cooker, it doesn't blow up and does not scare the crap out of me. Okay, so for today's agenda, we are going to I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Power Platform careers in Canada. So what is available here, and then I'm going to talk about what is the city of Montreal, its careers opportunities, as well as its advantages, as well as disadvantages. I'm also going to do the same for Toronto and Vancouver. And then I'm going to answer the one question that everybody and their cousin is going to put into the chat, which is, which one is best for me? So let's get started with the very, very brief overview of Power Platform careers in Canada. So what are the in-demand skills as well as salary data? So first things first is, what are the skills with the highest demand in Canada? So those are the things that are in biggest shortage. And here I'm going to be honest. Every Power Platform skill and every tech skill, even in general, in Canada is in shortage. But there are certain skills that have a bigger shortage than others. Number one is going to be Power Platform developers. And there's a big reason for that. Over the last 4 to 5 years, there has been a big migration of American companies that are hiring remote freelancers based out of Canada. The reason is that, generally speaking, because of the current exchange rate between the Canadian dollar as well as the US dollar, it's a heck lot cheaper for American-based company to hire Canadian freelancers. The great thing is that because the culture between Canada and the United States is so similar, the language is the same, everything is the same, it's very attractive for those American companies to basically look up north. The second skill is Microsoft Dynamics 365 Customer Service Specialist. So if you want to talk certification specific, and this is something that I've been talking about for the last 2 years, when I get the question, which certification is the most valuable or which certification has the biggest payoff, in Canada, I would say MB230, which is the customer service one, is definitely top of your list. The reason why that is I'm actually going to cover it in 2 slides, so hold off. Now, the third one here on my list is something that does not get talked about, something that is extremely underrated, and something that I personally benefited from having this particular skill set, which is Dynamics 365 Field Service. There's 2 components for that. Number one, nobody does it. So that means that there's a very, very low supply of qualified professional in that field. I personally got not 1, but 2 jobs because I was field service certified. Now, the second reason why it is so powerful is that Canada, if you look carefully, a lot of its economic growth since the oil crisis. So here we're talking about 2014, when the oil prices came down, a significant proportion of Canada's economic growth has been real estate related. And the underlying industry of real estate is you need people to build houses and you need people to maintain these very large condo towers. Now, because of that, these construction companies have seen such a big boom that they are needing better technology and better tools to better service their customer, which is why field service is probably one of the most underrated one. And the last one is Dynamics 365 Finance Specialist. So if you are a certified professional accountant and you have a bit of a tech background as well, and you get certified for the Dynamics 365 Finance, so that is the exam number MB310, you can make 6 figures in no time. And by 6 figures, I mean more than 100,000 Canadian dollars per year, easily, and before you turn 30. Now, the other big question I'm going to get is, how much money can I make? So one thing that I personally encountered is salaries do not vary that much based on the cost of living. So in most countries, France being a prime example, there are 2 salary grids, one for the Parisian region and then one for the rest of the country. It doesn't really work like that in Canada. So one thing to keep in mind, and I'm going to get to that a bit later. So for a permanent position, if you're a new grad fresh out of your bachelor's degree, you can expect to make roughly 50,000 Canadian per year. And by the way, this is before taxes. And depending on your skill set and your seniority, again, for a full-time permanent role, usually as far as publicly posted jobs. So this excludes most of the practice lead roles because they never get advertised. It tops off at about 150,000 Canadian per year. So if you take out taxes, the range per month, because this is something that is very frequently quoted in Europe, so that would be about $3,050 to about $8,700 per month after taxes. Now, that's for permanent position. As far as freelance contract goes, this is where you can make a lot of money. So for payroll, which means that you are a T4 employee, but that you work on a contract, the rates vary anywhere between $35 to about $80 an hour. If you want to get incorporated, which means that you do not have an employer-employee relationship, but rather you have your own business, if you will, the rates that I've seen vary anywhere between 50 to about 100 Canadian dollars. You can also work on contracts for US companies, especially, again, because of the time zone. Now, the rates for US companies, by the way, you only have the incorporated option, and they tend to be towards the really top end of the range. So for US contract, you can easily expect to make, I would say, about 100 Canadian per hour. So where can I work? You have very few options, unlike our southern neighbor, which is the United States of America. You have 5 main cities in the country, and as you can see, there's a very uneven distribution of those roles. So usually, including in good economic times and bad economic times, this is usually the typical split. So Toronto is about 35% of the job market. Montreal is about 20%. Vancouver is about 15%. Ottawa, which is Canada's capital, is at 10%, and Calgary is at 5%. Now, big disclaimer, those are for publicly posted position. There is something in Canada which is called the hidden job market, which I'm going to talk a lot about, because a lot of my jobs that I'm working on right now, because right now I am a freelancer, and none of my contracts were publicly advertised ever. I was actually directly contacted. Now, let's talk about why Dynamics 365 customer service is so powerful. The government. So if you are fluently bilingual, and by that I mean that you speak English and French, and either of you passed customer service certification or you passed a developer one, move to Ottawa. Like, it's as simple as that, because your cost of living is going to be roughly 30% less compared to the cities of Toronto and Vancouver. And the salaries and the rates offered in Ottawa are going to be significantly higher compared to what you would get in a similar contract, especially considering the fact that those are a bit lower stressed as well. So if you can qualify for these federal government roles, including the background checks, and that you have some very specialized skill or that you are bilingual, move to Ottawa. That's my biggest advice. Now, before anybody asks, why did I not move? Because after all, I am fluently bilingual. I did pass MB 230, and basically I meet all of the criteria to get a job in the federal government. The reason is, well, my spouse has a different opinion. Okay, so let's talk about the city of Montreal, which is my hometown and is basically Europe in North America. That's the best way to put it. So let's talk about your basics of the city of Montreal. So it has a population of about 4 million in the metro area. The languages spoken are French and English. Uh, Quebec only has one official language, which is French, but English is also commonly spoken in the city of Montreal. It has, again, a European vibe in North America. So you have a really nice mix of really old building into the old Montreal. And then you can go about 15 minutes west and you get the brand new condo towers of Griffintown. The reason why I mention it is that if you look at Toronto and Vancouver, because of the massive real estate boom, uh, almost anything which was old in those cities has been bulldozed. So if you go to Toronto, the only old part that is left is was known today as the Distillery District, which is about like not even 2 blocks. And then if you go to Vancouver, which I can actually see that part of town from my apartment, and I can also see mountains from my apartment, which is a big perk of living in Vancouver. We can see Gastown, which is about 1 or 2 streets for about three to 4 blocks that is left. Montreal has way more than that. And also, it is home to the world's best poutine. If you want a specific recommendations, La Banquise, of course, on Rachel Street is really good. And lesser known places would be Poutsineville, which a lot of my friends love. And the poutine that most suburban kids in Montreal grew up eating is called La Belle Province. Another one that I personally love is the Montreal Pool Room, which many people think is better than La Banquise, but that is highly debatable. One thing that everybody agrees on is that the Montreal Pool Room makes by far the best hot dogs. Okay, let's talk about jobs, which is probably the more interesting part for many of you. Okay, so as far as end users, one notable addition to this particular list, recent one, is Desjardins. So Desjardins is the largest credit union in Canada and one of the largest financial institutions in the country. The reason why they are implementing Dynamics 365, to give you a bit of history, is that last year there was a big data breach for Desjardins where basically a rogue employee leaked the entire database of all Desjardins customers and basically sold it to hackers. In order to avoid these types of leaks and to improve security, Desjardins is going with Dynamics 365 as far as their CRM implementation goes. Other big end users in Montreal would include SSQ Assurance, which is a very large insurance company, Marno Chapelle, which is a actuarial consultation firm, pension benefits type of company, and there is also Collège La Salle, which is a higher education, post-secondary education college. There are also some regional partners in Montreal, and many of them are currently hiring, by the way. So feel free to look at their websites. So there is Extern Vision, Javaco, Gestisoft, Cloud GenX Solution, as well as CGI. There are 2 global partners that have big offices, which are Avanade as well as Hitachi. And there is certain industry focus that Montreal is particularly strong at. So if you have retail industry experience, e-commerce, as well as association management experience, this is where you could potentially stand out in the city of Montreal. Now let's talk about its pros and cons. I'm going to talk about the pros first because I want to start a bit on a positive note. Number one is that it has by far the lowest housing cost of Canada's big 3. Just to give you a bit of a reference as far as number go, a single family detached home in a Montreal suburb goes for anywhere between 300,000 to 600,000 Canadian dollars, which is pretty cheap by Canadian standard. Especially when I'll go to the Toronto and Vancouver part, you will exactly see what I'm saying here. It has the lowest car insurance premiums among Canada's metropolitan area. So back in Montreal, I used to pay about, just to give you a bit of a comparison, about $100 for my car insurance for two people in their mid-20s, which is not bad. It also has the lowest childcare costs among all Canadian provinces and territories, which is about $200 per month per child. And because of this cost, that it made a lot of parents from other provinces pretty jealous. The newly re-elected British Columbia government, led by Premier John Horgan, his main election pledge during the BC provincial election was to make this happen in BC. Quebec also has the cheapest in-province university tuition fee, which is $4,000 per year. So when I graduated, my entire bachelor's degree costed me $16,000. To give you a bit of a comparison, if let's say I would have went to an Ontario-based university, it would have costed me about that per year. Montreal is also famous for having the best nightlife, the best bar scene, and also the best strip clubs in Canada. Should that interest anybody? Montreal is also famous for being the best city in Canada, as per Anthony Bourdain. May he rest in peace, to eat. So we have Joe Beef, Au Pied de Cochon, Tucké, all the restaurants that you've seen on, for example, his TV shows are in Montreal. And just to give you a bit of a background, Joe Beef is so difficult to get a reservation that I unfortunately never had the opportunity to eat there. And this is something that if you have a very high-end premium credit card or you know someone inside, those are the only way to get in Joe Beef. So if I'm able to come back to Montreal one day after this whole COVID, honestly, I may get one of those fancy credit cards just for a year just to get into Joe Beef, because that's the only way for me to get in. Montreal is also the closest city to major East Coast cities into the US. So you're about a 6-hour drive to Boston, a 7 hours drive to New York City, about a 8-ish hour drive to Philadelphia, and you're a 10-hour drive to Washington, D.C. Now let's talk about the disadvantages. So the cons is that the knowledge of French is required if you want to get a job. I'm going to put a small asterisk, unless you are a developer with no client-facing role. The reason why is that the developers, again, are in such big demand compared to the supply that very few companies are going to be willing to basically sacrifice on French. But in general, French is going to be pretty much mandatory. Montreal, because it is part of the province of Quebec, has the highest taxes among all Canadian provinces and territories. So if you want to talk about savings, again, if you are a dual income, no kid, Montreal income tax is going to be so expensive for you that it is cheaper for me to pay a crazy high amount of rent in downtown Vancouver than to pay the Quebec income tax. So if you're a Power Platform professional, you can expect to save at least $5,000 per year in income tax alone. One bad thing about the province of Quebec is that it has the longest wait time to get access to healthcare among Canada's metropolitan area. So so Toronto is better, Vancouver is better, as well as Calgary, as well as Edmonton and Ottawa. So just to give you a bit of a comparison, if you go into into a Montreal emergency room, you can reasonably expect to wait like 12 hours. This is the typical average. In Toronto, from my personal experience and the ones of my friends, it's usually about 4 hours. And in Greater Vancouver, it's going to be about 2 hours wait before you can see a doctor. Quebec and Montreal also has the worst road quality. So Montreal is famous for being pothole land. And yeah, when when I used to drive very frequently from Toronto to Montreal, every time I hit the border, it's kind of like boom, and then basically the car would kind of go down and come back up. It's kind of a weird thing, but if you've driven along the 401, then you know exactly what I mean. It also has the harshest winter among Canada's big three. Uh, so again, that may be a factor for some people. It definitely is for my spouse. And there's also one thing that's a bit controversial, but I had to unfortunately include it, which is the omnipresence of identity politics and the whole language and the whole Quebec separation debate. I'm not going to talk about it, but this is something that um, if you are a person who's often targeted by those messages and that you are perceived by a lot of these people as being so-called an outsider or a non-Quebecer, it can weigh down on you mentally. So now let's talk about Toronto, which all Torontonians unfortunately think we are the center of the world. Uh, no comments on that one either. Okay, so Toronto has a population of about 6 million people into the GTA, and there are about 120,000 people who move there per year. And this is, by the way, only international migration. So this will exclude Canadian from other parts of the country who move to Toronto. So as far as languages spoken, the main one is English, but there are also more than 150 other languages present in Toronto. It has a very large city vibe. It is also a mini United Nations. It is incredibly diverse, and it is also home to the best food market in the world, which is the St. Lawrence Market. I've been there several times. It is absolutely lovely. It's amazing. Now let's talk about the opportunities in Toronto. So you have two of the big five banks, which are CIBC as well as RBC, or Dynamics 365 end user. There are other banks as well. So there's Equitable, there's the newly formed Canada Infrastructure Bank. There is also insurance companies, which are Empire Life as well as Munich Re, and there is the Toronto Maple Leafs. I am a Montreal Canadiens fan, so let's move on to the regional partners. So there's a lot of partners. So those are only a few because there's way more. There's, for example, there's New Signature, Serum Dynamics, Video, MNP, etc., etc., etc. There are also way more global partners because of the language barriers. Many global partners just outright refuse to open an office in Quebec. So, as well as national partners as well. So there's Deloitte, IBM, Avnat, KPMG, as well as Hitachi. And as far as the main industry strength of Toronto, development, because there's a phenomenon of many American partners who open up an office in Toronto. There's also a strength in terms of the nonprofit industry, because there's, for example, the Retail Council of Canada, which I worked at, full disclosure. There's the Ontario College of Physicians, the Ontario College of Nurse. There's a lot of charities as well, which use Dynamics 365. The finance industry, as I mentioned, because Toronto is Canada's finance place, as well as field service, again, that is related to the real estate boom in Canada. Advantages and disadvantages of living in Toronto from someone who actually lived there. Number one is that biggest city means the greatest opportunities. So depending on your ambition in life and depending on what you want to do and where you want to go, you might want to be in Toronto just to get the greatest shot for, let's say, promotion and big contracts and whatnot. Toronto is a foodie heaven as well as a shopaholic heaven. Foodie heaven because when you have such a diverse population, they bring their food, and I highly benefited from that, and I miss some of that actually. Some of my two favorite spots in Toronto that I miss the most are, number one, there's Bombay Roti, which is like Indian fast food place, and there is California Sandwiches, which is a Italian sandwich shop located onto Ossington and College roughly, and Bombay Roti's Bloor and Bathurst, roughly. Those are two amazing places that I would highly, 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 highly recommend. Another big advantage is that Toronto is not land or water constrained. And the nice part about that is that GTA, technically speaking, still has room to grow. So right now, Hamilton is starting to be considered a suburb of Toronto. Oshawa is starting to be considered a suburb of Toronto. And what's happening is because of COVID, um, people that already know that they are not going back to office full time are starting to move to Waterloo or starting to move to London, Ontario. Has been as well some movement between to Kingston, which is a city halfway between Montreal and Toronto. So it's GTA and its sphere of influence is still going to grow. Also, what's really nice is that Toronto is an easy road trip to the Midwest as well as the East Coast of the U.S. and most major Canadian city. So to have done it, Toronto, New York is about 8-hour drive. Toronto, Chicago is about 9 hours. Toronto, Detroit is about 3 hours. And you also have access to most major Canadian cities. So within a driving distance, you have Montreal, Ottawa, London, Kingston, and a lot of different places. And if for you, you're not a big fan of winter, if you want to have sunny days year round, you're going to probably get the mildest winter as far as it goes. And I'm going to get to why when we talk about Vancouver. And the Toronto Pearson International Airport, which many Torontonians love to hate, is actually a plus on its own because you have so many flight options in terms of flying anywhere you want that this alone deserves to be its own point of conversation. And honestly, the airport is pretty decent. Now for the cons, and this is something that I've actually experienced somewhat. No, let me correct that. I've not experienced it personally, but that I've witnessed other people experience is the cutthroat competition when it comes to job hunting. So because you have 120,000 highly qualified professionals who move to Toronto every single year because of the way that Canada's immigration system is being designed, the job market is just ridiculous. And what happens is that, and this is something that I've seen unfortunately, is that because many employers want to have so-called Canadian experience, if you are onto the job market and that is your first job in Canada, you're going to find it difficult to find an employer who's willing to take a chance on you. But for me, because I have the privilege of being born in Canada and because I have the privilege of being bilingual, I was shielded from that whole competition. So I've seen it other people go through it, and I really, really, really sympathize with you. So if you're watching this in Toronto right now and you are job hunting, one thing I would tell you is that there is salvation outside of Toronto. So I recommend you not just to look in Toronto because you want to stay there, even though that it's lovely, but to try to see other parts of the country. Also, another thing about Toronto is that the traffic sucks big time. So its road system, as well as its public transit, was designed for a metro area of about 3 million people, not 6. I also have an entire rant I could do about the Toronto subway and the TTC, but I guess I will leave that for later because it's 35 minutes in and I want to leave a lot of time for questions. Another thing that I've seen is expect to pay between $300 and $500 per month for car insurance. To give you a comparison, I know someone who lives in Queens, which is a borough of New York City. They pay about $150 per month for car insurance. The reason why Toronto is so expensive is that, unfortunately, there is a very, very, very high fraud rate, and that the insurance companies do not have the capacity to basically hire so many fraud investigators that would be needed. So what do? They just basically shoot up everybody's premiums. There's also strong competition to get onto the housing ladder. So a house can still get 20 plus offers and prices may still go up. So I had friends that were looking for a house in Scarborough specifically. They were looking for a townhome, and the house that they got already had 20 offers on them, and they are the people who won. So because of the high volume of offers, uh, unfortunately, despite Toronto being so expensive, there is still room for prices to go up. Now let's talk about Vancouver, British Columbia, which is the city that I currently live in. And the license plate of BC says beautiful British Columbia, and got it for a reason. After all, I can see mountains right now, and I can see a sunset from my apartment that is onto the mountain. So it honestly, I'm kind of looking up a bit because it just looks so beautiful. It's crazy. Okay, so Vancouver has a population of about 2.6 million in the metro area, but it keeps on growing. The main languages spoken are English, Chinese, Hindi, and Punjabi. So about more than a third of Vancouver's population is actually ethnically Chinese, and there's a very strong Indian community as well. It is by far the most beautiful metropolitan area in Canada. It's not even a close contest, so don't bother arguing. And it is also home to the best Chinese restaurants outside of China. Again, Vancouver is 1/3 Chinese. And more specifically, if you go to Richmond, which is immediately south of the city of Vancouver, you have the most authentic and the best Chinese food you'll ever eat in your life, unless, of course, you wanted to go to China, which is not really possible right now, again, because all the borders are shut down. Now, what are the opportunities in Vancouver? So in Canada, Vancouver is a bit of a non-market because there's not really a big end user community. So there's the Port of Vancouver, there's Collier's, and there's KPU, which is Kwantlen Polytechnic University. What Vancouver does really well is all the organizations that are based out of Seattle and California that struggle to find qualified employees, as well as even Arizona and Nevada. So basically the western portion of the US, if they struggle to find employees, they just open up an office in Vancouver, and then they start hiring here. For example, this week I got messaged to do a contract in the state of Arizona, which is very basically it's in the southwest of the US. So there are some regional partners as well. So there's Catapult ERP, Encore, Purely Serum, Cortec, and there's OmniLogic as well. As far as global partner, there's a ton of option. They're basically all here as well. Industry focused software development, real estate, construction, as well as higher education. And Microsoft themselves has 3 offices in downtown Vancouver. So if you want to get super specific, the first one that they opened up ever is a 5 minutes walk away from my apartment right now. So it's about Smythe and Beatty. There's another one that is basically that side from me. So there's east, north, they have a really small one in Gastown, which looks beautiful. And there's another big one that they basically bought the entire top of the CF Pacific Center Mall in downtown Vancouver, which is Georgia and Granville, about a 10 minutes walk from my apartment. So there's lots of options for you. Advantages and disadvantages. Pros of living in Vancouver. There is no Canadian winter. The con of that, no snow on Christmas, which for me is really, 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 really weird. It's by far your mildest climate in Canada. There is nature and beauty at your doorstep. Again, I can see mountains from my apartment. You also have so many parks, so many green. One of the most beautiful scenic drive that you'll ever do in Vancouver proper is if you drive from the University of British Columbia and you go south on Marine Drive. So from there all the way to about Marine Drive at Canby, so many trees. It looks beautiful. It's just ridiculous. Also, another pro, it's slightly less expensive compared to the city of Toronto. So here real estate value have peaked. And part of that is that the government of British Columbia has actively tried to cool down the real estate market. So, for example, they were the first province in the country to introduce a foreign buyers tax. They were the first to also introduce a tax onto homes valued at more than $3 million. They've also introduced what's called the home vacancy tax. So they are actively trying to make it a bit more affordable for people. But still, even if you are too highly compensated professional, you have to drive about 40 to 45 kilometers to have either a townhome or a single family home, which is somewhat affordable. It is also the most livable city among Canada's big three. It's been in every international ranking that you can possibly think of. It also has, in my personal opinion, the best public transit among the big three. So everywhere else in Canada, you have kind of the main cities public transit, and then you have separate systems for the suburbs. BC did something different. It's all one system. It's all integrated, which is under the TransLink umbrella. And because of that, everything is synchronized. It works great. It's reliable. I have no complaint about Vancouver's public transit. And if any Vancouverite were to complain, I would tell them, try the TTC, my friend. It also has the best Asian food, except for West Asian and Middle Eastern in Canada. So the best Chinese food, probably the best Indian food as well, the best Japanese food, the best Korean food, the best Thai food, and so on and so forth. And one big perk is that it has the same time zone as the US West Coast. And the reason why that is that, again, all the companies from Seattle, California, and the whole Western US that are struggling to hire over there are basically opening up offices here. Cons of Vancouver, most openings are not publicly advertised. None of the contracts that I'm currently working on were actually advertised to anybody. I was directly contacted for them. Another thing is that you feel cut off from the rest of the country. So, for example, if I wanted to go home to my parents' house, it would be a 5-hour flight. In comparison, Toronto, Montreal is about a 6-hour drive and a 1-hour flight. So you kind of feel cut off a bit. It also has limited options for long weekend trips. So you have Whistler, you have the Okanagan Valley, you have Victoria and the whole of Vancouver Island, and then you have Seattle. If you are a nature person, you are in heaven. But if you want to see other big city, your main options would be Victoria and Seattle. Another thing is that Vancouver is often called a one industry city, which is real estate. And one joke that I've heard that I think sums it up beautifully is Vancouver has no industry, but for some reason we have land that people are willing to pay millions of dollars for. Vancouver also has a so-called sunshine tax. So real estate is expensive for what it is because of the climate. Basically, right now, I'm going to make a lot of people jealous. Oh, it's actually 5 degrees right now, but it's as cold as basically it's going to get for the entire winter. So that's probably like our low right now. And that's because Vancouver has 2 seasons. So there's summer and then there's rain. So if you come to Vancouver like as a tourist, I would say come between like May and like September, because from October to about April, it's basically rain and dark and gray, but you do have some sun as well. Which city is best for me? My answer to that is 36 million Canadians, 36 million different answers, and that's the way it should be. Now, question time. Oh, there's people in the chat.
So there was a question around Edmonton, if you knew of the market there.
Yes, I've heard.
Yeah. That was one. I personally see quite a bit of jobs in Edmonton. I'd say
Yeah.
it's similar to what you expect between the difference between Quebec City and Montreal. Edmonton is more government, but there is
Yeah.
still space for Power Platform professionals, especially, I mean, if you look at Microsoft's website, they're always posting openings for professionals who wanted to do consulting for
Mhm.
Microsoft or sales for Microsoft. So I always seen that
Yeah.
there.
So if I can comment specifically, most provincial government, Quebec here being the notable exception, are Dynamics 365 and Power Platform end users. So the fun fact is there are more Dynamics jobs that are publicly available in Victoria, which is the provincial capital of BC, compared to Vancouver, which is a city that is 5 times the population. Um, Nick Dead is saying it's too late for me to know this. No, it's never too late. It's better now than never, actually. The best time to plant a tree was about 20 years ago, and the second best time is today.
That's it. Yeah, I've had customers in Victoria. Yeah, the city's booming with Dynamics
Yeah,
projects. There's lots there. And I was presenting earlier today, Vicky, on a particular initiative with BC's government called BC
yeah,
Pilot. So there is an
yeah.
immigration program for tech
Yes,
jobs in BC
I
going
can
on right
actually
now.
comment on that because one of my colleagues at work what actually got permanent residency under that program, so I can qualify, so I can comment on how easy or difficult it is. So what happened is that she basically said to her manager, like, hey, I want to apply under this program. And it's basically like you just fill out like a small form, like a one letter basically form is essentially, then you apply to the BC government. So both main Power Platform roles qualify. So whether you're a business analyst or a developer or an architect or whatever, you qualify. And then basically 2 to 3 weeks later, she got a letter back from the government saying that she was approved. And after that is the federal portion of the application, which is the same that my spouse did. So my spouse got in under the Quebec postgraduate route. So that part is going to be the same. The biggest pro tip that I could give you is make sure you have your birth certificate before you apply, because my spouse applications was delayed by about 2 months
Yeah.
because that was
Eh,
a mess.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
And for
So
those that were born abroad, I'd say have your birth certificate translated ahead of time too. Not only have it, but have it translated because they
the
ask for.
translated part is fairly easy. I mean, you could find a translator fairly easily in Canada to have
Mhm.
it done translated. And one thing that I will mention, and this is something that I've also encountered, embassy birth certificates are not accepted.
All right. So Mark Tremblay, hey Mark, nice to have
Salut,
you
Marc.
here. He's asking if 100% remote work is achievable.
Yes.
I've been in this office for the last 4 or 5 years now, and I only do 100% remote work. I'm not sure. Maybe some companies in BC be more open to that. The customer I had in BC, it was providing services to the government, and I did it 100% remote. I did have to travel every now and then, but I think over the course of a year I went there twice.
Yeah.
So it was more like a paid vacation, if you will. I mean, I was still doing work there, but you get to visit Victoria around the fall.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
beautiful.
awesome. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I can say. So, from my personal experience, so I worked in a traditional office job until March 15. And then through a contest of circumstances, I ended up being a remote freelancer. And I'm yes, my income because of COVID, there has not been many contracts, but surprisingly, I just ran the number and I worked, I would say maybe half the hours I did compared to last year, but I'm making the same amount of money as I did last year.
Yeah.
So, and I'm fully remote now. And what's awesome is because I'm not stuck going to an office in 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 downtown as a millennial, I can actually have a shot at being a homeowner one day
There you go. That's
because of
awesome.
Canada's housing crisis. Yep.
That's
Uh,
awesome. That's great news. Um, I wanted to make a comment when you talked about U.S. companies opening offices in the Vancouver area. I was
yeah.
approached a couple times by Microsoft for positions in Vancouver, and they were really cool positions. I was tempted to move. I have three kids, so we are not ready to make that move. But the team was with the Dynamics 365 guide. So Vancouver area, the Microsoft Vancouver office does a lot of work on AR, VR, augmented
Yeah.
reality,
And there's
virtual
Teams as
reality.
well.
So the
Teams is
position,
based out here, believe
yeah,
it or
so the
not.
positions are really, really cool. So
Yeah.
if you ever contemplating that move, I'd say if you want to get engaged into a project like that or a position like that, Vancouver is would be an awesome
Yeah.
spot. Yeah.
Definitely. And Microsoft, by the way, because the biggest turnoff for most people to move to Vancouver is the housing cost. So Microsoft has already announced that post-COVID they will be moving to 3 days per per week work from home and 2 days per day into the office as a baseline for everybody, with more days work from home being negotiable based on your role and based on the manager and based on the team and whatnot. So, for example, if you wanted to join me into the South Surrey area, which has two beaches, and you are next to the U.S. border, and if you're a hardcore cross-border shopper like me, this is awesome. Of course, once the border becomes open, and that most people will be vaccinated, you can actually afford a really, really nice house for about $750,000, which is cheap by Vancouver standard. So, yeah, you can join me.
Better start saving if we want to move. But the rest of the house market, Calgary is not
Yeah,
that different. The average starting price here is around $500,000, 550,000.
for a
So just
detached.
a couple hundred thousand.
For me, that was not even a detached. It was actually a townhome. A detached would start at
Wow,
a million
there
in
you go.
South Surrey.
All right, better save if you want to live in the Vancouver area. You never know, but it's beautiful out there. I
Yeah,
personally, no offense here, but I personally like Victoria better, maybe because of the small town vibe.
yeah.
But it's just amazing. And then there
Victoria
are
is
other
actually,
areas of the province that's really nice too. We've been to the Kootenay Valley this summer.
yeah,
Uh, so it's just nice all around.
yeah.
Anyhow, let me see. There was a question. I think Giselle Carvalho. She asked, if I understood correctly, whether the how does the Calgary market compare, or what is the highest demand in Calgary? Is it
Eh,
Power Platform developers or Dynamics 365?
Calgary, I would say the biggest one I've seen were finance and operations by a really wide margin uh, in Calgary. Personally, that's what I
Yeah,
see.
and I think it's due to the business that are set up here. We have a major hub for Hitachi, which does a lot of
Yeah,
FNO and VC, and also Sierra. So that may play a role there. But I mean, like Mark said, I think the positions are there.
but
Market what? Go ahead.
one thing that I noticed in Calgary, because I almost moved to Calgary. So actually, what happened is that my spouse had two interviews, one of which was in Calgary, the other one in Vancouver. and he wanted to go to Vancouver because of the weather. Um, what happened was that when I tried to look for roles in Calgary and kind of fill the market, um, none of the roles are like actually advertised, but if you contact companies, they, depending on how their billables are going, they may actually make a role for you, because not many people want to move to Calgary because of the oil crash of 2014, and many people are scared of actually like moving there. But it's so cheap, and you still have the mountains from you. So
That's right. I love it here. I lived in Quebec City, lived in other cities in the States. I like the big town and yet like small town type of vibe. Everybody gets to know everybody pretty much. But anyways, we don't know what the future holds, right? So
yeah,
maybe Vancouver, Victoria, or somewhere else that's warmer than here. We'll never know. Let me
yeah.
see if there is anything
Yeah,
else.
I've seen comments. So Giselle, the biggest demand by far in Calgary, FNO. After that, I would say developer, you can't really go wrong anywhere, because you're going to get a lot of remote contracts from the US.
Hmm.
So that's one thing I would look at. Um, then there was Juan. Hi, Juan. Um, in general, how hard it is to learn field service. It's not bad. It's different compared to other skill set. Into the Power Platform, it's less creative. It's more ERPE. But it's kind of different. So the CRM side is very like creative and very like you can do things 5 million different ways. But in field service, it's more like a organized, more kind of Cartesian type of personality. Whereas I found the main CRM apps a bit more creative. That's my take on field service. Uh, Marc, I can take this in French. Is 100% remote work achievable? Yes. Has there been a boom into the remote contracts? Heck yes. Heck yes. Euh, donc, je vais le répéter en français. Euh, est-ce que le travail 100% à domicile est possible au Canada? Absolument oui. De mon expérience personnelle, depuis le 15 mars, je suis 100% à domicile. Et oui, il y a eu un boom incroyable avec les contrats à distance. Donc, par exemple, maintenant, j'ai des compagnies qui me contactent même de l'Europe, Arizona, euh, Vancouver, Victoria, un peu partout, bref. Um, Kootenay Valley is gorgeous. I've never been there, but I'm sure that it is indeed lovely, and you cannot go wrong if you can make it to BC. Yes. Um, Philip says thank you for the information, Vicky, and thank you, Victor. So yeah, thank you. Uh, Obrigado, someone said. I guess that's Portuguese for ciao or something. Okay.
It's thanks in
Thank
Portuguese.
you. Okay, obrigado means thanks. Big thanks for Victor for organizing. Thanks, Vicky. I look forward to networking with you further. Please let me know if I can do. Enchanté, Mustafa. Yes. You can actually. Should I put my contact? By the way, if you want to learn more details about life in Montreal versus Toronto versus Vancouver, I actually have a YouTube channel where I've done 17 videos so far that compare an aspect of life in those three cities. I've also done Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver specific content. So if you want to check it out, I'll just drop the link in the chat. Just kind of shameless plug here.
All right, I
If,
will. I will hijack. Vicky, thank you so much
yeah,
for your contribution. I was talking with Nick Domo earlier. We gotta do this again in person as soon as this COVID thing is over.
yeah,
All right.
and next time, please make sure that I will actually wake up early for you, because a lot of people into Asia would actually want to watch this, and for them right now it's like 4 a.m. or something.
I know. I know. We'll make
So
sure. I didn't want to be too brutal to you.
okay, you want to know what I do on a regular basis?
Okay.
Training sessions in Europe at 2 a.m. Pacific.
That's
This
my
week.
life. I have a customer in England that I have to take calls that early as well.
Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty tough, but hey, like if you love what you do, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me if you want to learn more about the 3 cities that I did mention, here's the channel into the link. So feel free to have a look at it.
Awesome. I have the Wheel of Fortune here, and I'm about to spin for the prizes. We have about 4 shirts as this one. I have various sizes. I may not have the exact size for you, so if you win and I don't have your size, please give me time to get it ready and send it over to you. My goal is to send it to you before Christmas so that it's a nice Christmas gift for you. All right, so